Okay, wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Just gonna wait just a couple of seconds for everybody to be able to hop in. Thank you so much for coming to this presentation. We're just gonna wait a couple of seconds before we get started so everybody has a chance to hop into the presentation. Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. We are so excited to have you here. We're going to do a quick round of introductions. So my name is Becca Vogt. I am the Senior Recruitment Manager here at Immigrant Justice Corps, and I will pass it over to my colleague, Pedro.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Pedro Hippolito, and I'm a recruitment manager at IJC, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Victor.
Hello, everyone. So nice to have you here. My name is Victor Cueva. I am the Fellowship Director at IJC, and I'm also an alum of the program. I was a fellow back in 2015. I'll pass it over to my colleague, Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lauren Miliacha. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the Training and Legal Technical Assistance Director.
Perfect. Yes, and we are so excited to have you here today. And we're going to talk through Immigrant Justice Corps. And specifically, we're going to really discuss our Justice Fellowship. We are currently recruiting for the class of 2025. The application is open, so we'll talk more about that as we go along. So what to expect from this presentation? Of course, we're going to introduce you to IJC, introduce you to our theory of change, as well as describe the Justice Fellowship itself. We'll give an overview of the IJC Fellowship, as well as, legal trainings, services, supports, resources available to our fellows during their experience. And then, of course, we'll provide additional information on the Justice Fellowship application process, kind of what to expect in the application as well as selection process. And of course, at the end, we'll have a Q&A. You'll see that we have a Q&A feature here in the webinar. So please feel free, if you have questions come up throughout the presentation, you're welcome to use that Q&A feature. We might not get to your question till the end, and perhaps we'll answer your question along the way, but that's totally fine. We'll definitely be sure to address your questions once we get to that Q&A session at the end. Great. So what is our vision here at IJC? Our vision is that all immigrants, regardless of status, are treated with dignity and respect and have access to justice. Immigration reform is much needed, and there's many pathways to that change. Of course, laws have to be reformed to be humane and transparent. Social norms need to be changed to, show how we value immigrants within our society. We also need a judiciary and administrative system that produces humane laws and equitable determinations. And where we feel IJC really shines is that we believe every immigrant should have access to quality legal representation. So what do we do here at IJC? So as you likely know, if you're here on this webinar and interested in this sort of work, there's nothing that makes a bigger difference than having skilled legal representation for immigrants that are facing threat of deportation, pursuing lawful status and citizenship. Our organization was founded from really direct experience with a really broken and failed immigration system. So Immigrant Justice Corps is dedicated to mobilizing quality counsel to meet the needs of vulnerable immigrant communities nationwide. So we do this in many ways. First, we recruit, like we're doing right now, where we recruit promising, committed, new lawyers and college graduates for two-year fellowship programs. We provide an entry point into the field of immigration law. But we don't just provide that entry point, we also support our fellows throughout the way to become experts in the field. We'll talk a lot more in detail later in the presentation about skills development and the support we provide through our network, trainings, etc. But we want to ensure that our fellows feel supported and can become experts in the field. And then we mobilize our fellows. We have our fellows be hosted at organizations throughout the country that do this work, that provide direct legal services to immigrant communities. So we mobilize our fellows throughout the nation now to serve immigrant communities in need. So what is the Justice Fellowship? So our Justice Fellows are recent law graduates. So we define that as people that are within 2 years of law school graduation. We'll talk more about eligibility here in a little bit. What do our Justice Fellows do? They provide quality representation to immigrant communities in need. There's various areas that you might work on as a fellow, such as removal defense, whether that's detained or non-detained, humanitarian forms of relief, representation of unaccompanied children, as well as, community engagement, such as know your rights campaigns, intakes, pro se application assistance, and things of that nature. These are 2-year secured placements with our partner host organizations, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well. And all of our Justice Fellows have a guaranteed minimum salary of $62,500 a year and benefits as part of their fellowship. So host organizations, what are host organizations? What do they look like? So our fellows are placed with vetted host organizations. They're typically nonprofit community-based organizations, and we have a variety of partners kind of throughout the United States, but they vary a lot. They vary every year. So every year host organizations have to apply or reapply if they've hosted fellows in the past, and so that we can vet them and ensure that they are still or are a great placement for our fellows. They can vary by geographic location. We'll show you on a map in a second. We started in New York City, but we're now in about 34 states plus DC. So we are these can vary a lot depending on, where you're interested in being located and where our host organizations they're applying from each year. The scope of work also looks different organization to organization. That can be client focused, perhaps they're focused on youth or DV survivors, the populations that they serve, as well as issue focus. Those can vary a lot. The organizational style can vary, also staffing. So we have some host partners that are large they have multiple offices throughout the United States, very large organizations that do this work. And then we have some that are very small, kind of grassroots. They might have only a handful of immigration lawyers working in the community. So there's a wide variety of size and just variation of the type of experience you might have depending on the organization itself. There's also a difference and variation in resources at times. Of course, this is nonprofit work. So again, some organizations might have a plethora of resources, and some, you might be sharing, resources with a smaller group of people. So everything about our host organizations can vary year by year. Your experience would vary depending on the organization. And the great part of our matching process is you get to tell us your preferences of where you would like to be placed if you make it to that finalist stage. And we'll talk about that more in a little while. But these are just a few logos of organizations that we have partnered with currently or in the past. And again, every year it changes, and we'll have more information about that as we get closer to the matching process. Where are we now? So we love this map. This is the map as of this month of where our fellows will be placed this upcoming year. So, as I mentioned, we started in New York City, and now we are in over 30 states throughout the country. You can see here kind of where our fellows are located and where they'll be active this upcoming fall. But we're gonna have over 200 active fellows this upcoming fall. We're really excited about that. Our last 2 classes have been the largest classes in our organization's 10-year history. And so we're really excited to see where else we might expand this upcoming year. But this kind of gives you an idea of different areas that we have our fellows throughout the country. Great, so why IJC? Why the fellowship? So we really believe that a fellowship with IJC is really the next best step in your career if you want to become an expert immigration advocate. In a second, you'll hear about our trainings, wellness, professional supports, regional experts, like how we really try to equip you with as much support as possible to help you sustain in this field long term. You'll be joining a community of really passionate, like-minded individuals. We have a cohort model. As you can see, we have a lot of fellows that are active at the same time. So you're going to be joining a community of advocates that have the same, commitment to expanding immigrant justice. And then, of course, our network. We have over 275 fellows and alumni that will serve as a resource for you during the fellowship as well as beyond when you become an alumni yourself. So now I'm going to pass it over to Victor, our fellowship director, to kind of talk about more support that we have in place for our fellows.
Sure, thank you. So what sets us apart? I mean, I remember when I was going through the steps that you're about to engage in and deciding what to do after law school and looking at being completely invested in immigration, choosing to do or at least applying to be an IJC fellow, because it wasn't just the support and training that we offer, but it was the community, it was all that Becca just mentioned, and I saw it as this step that will propel my career into becoming the best immigration attorney that I could be. And I was right, because as you can see on this slide, we start with a full onboarding, which we call our fall training. And my colleague Lauren and I are putting together a great curriculum for our incoming class, which is the biggest class ever, to provide a lot of substantive training, so that we can jumpstart their careers and have all the substance that they need so that they can hit the ground running once they get placed at their host organizations. We also offer monthly trainings for CLE credit, which again, Lauren here does an amazing job at putting together the curriculum, getting guest speakers, alumni to present, and we can offer CLE credits so that as newly admitted practitioners, you can have all the credits that you need upon completion of the fellowship. And now we're pivoting towards regional expertise training. We actually have new hires, new staff at IJC joining us from other parts of the country so that we can continue to provide quality advice or quality training rather to our fellows so that you guys can get the best training from people that are doing the work in the areas where they're being placed. Throughout the fellowship, we have ongoing support and legal skills development. We have a great listserv that a lot of active fellows and alumni actually use, where you can ask legal questions, you can ask about referrals and supports, and it's very active. And it's also being monitored by fellowship managers in case something goes unanswered. We try to address that in other settings like below where there's community building, office hours. So we always keep an eye on the listservs to monitor it and see if we can address that during our office hours. We also have a legal resource library that we ask our alumni, our fellows to contribute to, and that serves as great samples as you're starting your career and you're looking at briefs, you're looking at sample cover letters or packets to put together to USCIS. We'd like to try to populate the library and update it as often as possible. And with more fellows on the field, with more alumni, it's a collective effort to make sure that it is updated and that it is accessible to everyone, well, the fellows. And we provide technical assistance where it is needed. Sometimes with smaller organizations, maybe a supervisor is overwhelmed and the fellow can rely on our TLTA department that Lauren leads, so that our TLTA managing attorneys can offer some technical assistance, some support if your organization or the supervisors in there are overwhelmed and you just need another layer of review, if you just need to attend our office hours. And we also often use it as case rounds so that fellows can tell us more about what they're doing, the case patterns that they see, and we address them, and we use our collective brains with the other fellows in the field to come up with solutions to any issues that may arise. As part of our community building on top of our office hours, we are also going to be doing regional events. A big part of the fellowship is community building, and with our expansion throughout the country, it is harder post-pandemic. I mean, everything has been virtual, and the in-person connectivity is something that we are working towards because it's, in our opinion, the most effective way to create community. So we will be hosting 4 regional events this coming year and hoping to continue that and go throughout the country to foster community building where fellows are located. We also offer bar exam and preparation stipend. Now, this is starred because it's also dependent on available funds, but I also like to say it's starred because this is something that was not there when I was a fellow. So it is a great advantage that more that younger fellows have. We offer about 2,500, up to 2,500 of reimbursement for bar exam preparation courses and state bar exam fees. So if you become a fellow, take advantage of that. Again, it wasn't there when I was a fellow. I'm a little jealous, but I'm glad that times are changing and we can offer more support. For our documented fellows, we also offer payment of DACA renewal fees. again, is more resources being invested from IJC that were not available before. And I think it's a great way to show our documented fellows how we can also support them throughout that whole process. Additionally, this whole right side is just not stuff that we had. There's a sign-on bonus for $2,000 if you become a Justice Fellow, just as a showing of our excitement to you that you're joining our class and our cohort. And those funds can be used however you want. And that, I will say, is what sets us apart on top of being the only immigration-specific fellowship of its kind. That's really its purpose is to train you and so that you can be the best immigration attorney that you can be. Can you please go to the next slide? So as fellowship director, I wanted to also summarize the supports that the fellowship team can offer once you become a fellow, once you successfully have gone through the recruitment process and you're matched to an organization and you become an IJC fellow. As I mentioned before, we are gearing to our regional programmings and events. There's going to be 4 fellowship managers that are going to be in 4 regions of the country that will be building programming with me. Events that are going to be specific to each region so that we can build that community that we would like to see more up in other areas of the country that's not New York, because we are here, so it's a little bit easier to do that here. We have also launched our wellness and support program. This is fairly new to IJC, and what we do is have guided discussions or interactive workshops where we have mental health service providers that we engage in so that they can provide their resources to our fellows. Some of the topics that we have explored during these interactive workshop or discussions have been deconstructing perfectionism, stress management, secondary trauma, self-care, burnout, boundaries, and other great topics. And this has been well received by our fellows. Mental health is a huge component of longevity in the field. And again, this is something that we did not have in the beginning stages of IJC. I personally did not know what secondary trauma was until my 3rd or 4th year of practice. And it was it is really important for us to continue to invest resources in this programming and continue to develop it so that fellows are aware of these mental health issues that are just inherent with representation of immigrants in areas of need. Aside from that, we also have structured check-ins with IJC staff. This is an all-hands-on-deck effort. Everyone on this call participates in a one-on-one meeting with a fellow. We do that twice a year, just for the fellow to tell us how you're doing, what your experience is like, should there be any issues, just so that you can keep IJC in the loop. And it's a great way for us to then hear feedback. And I am very I use that feedback to build the programming, so I really like to hear from fellows that participate in check-ins. We also offer professional mentorship when there are some issues that arise or you just are not sure how to navigate perhaps a difficult conversation with a colleague or a supervisor. You should feel free to reach out to IJC, and a fellowship manager will give you that professional mentorship to coach you to navigate these circumstances, especially if this is your first professional job. It can be of great use to reach out to a fellowship manager for that support. Also new, and I'm really glad for this, is that we now have second-time bar test taker programming. If you don't pass the bar and you are an IJC fellow, what we will do is have a webinar where we can discuss some tips on what things to change in study habits, what to do, so that you can conquer the bar exam in your second attempt. And what we did this past year is ask our alumni who were in that position, myself included. I did not pass the first time, and we do a one-to-one coaching, but with alumni, where the alumni will be a mentor and can also just continue to support you as you gear to take on the exam a second time. So that's another new programming that IJC has done to support fellows in that position. And last but not least, we also connect fellows to our alumni network for additional support, mentorship, and professional development. Alumni are involved whenever we want to have some trainings. For example, for our fall training, we are going to have a bunch of alumni that will be attending to provide trainings to our incoming class. when we have workshops, or in the example above, when the fellows need help and just need mentorship because they were in that situation of not passing the bar exam, they show up. So it's a great advantage to have now 10 years worth of alumni, of professionals, people who are leaders in the field, people who are in academia, people who are judges that you can just tap into for advice, for networking, or to ask for samples. So that's what sets us apart. If you can go to the next slide. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Lauren.
Thanks, Victor. I think this is a really fun slide, and I just joined IJC this December, coming from the Bronx Defenders. And when I think about what training and legal technical assistance we really can provide, it's pretty powerful stuff. So a little bit about our entire department. It is a long title, so we do shorten it to TLTA, but we are indeed the Training and Legal Technical Assistance team. We work very closely with fellowship, really so that we are being responsive to fellow needs and so that we know what people are working on in the field and what your clients are going through. And in a very exciting way, as everyone has shared before, we are really breaking out into regional expertise. And so we're going to be welcoming a West Coast manager, a Midwest manager, and there is an East Coast and New York City managing attorney in TLTA. And we are here to provide the highest level legal education that we can in immigration law and practice. And so that really does look like monthly trainings, that looks like substantive support, that looks like troubleshooting when it comes to complicated case strategy. And we are available to all fellows throughout this journey on your fellowship. And there is, as Victor was flagging, there are monthly trainings where we provide a traditional platform so people can come and learn about the law, learn about skills. We also have different kinds of workshops, as also Victor was flagging, that will focus on different topics. We do have certain experts in practice areas that are joining us, so we're going to be able to provide more localized and specialized expertise in the law and walk with you as you guide your clients through this process. One of the things that is really a lot of fun, I think, if I could say that for Victor and I, is when we get to talk to you in case rounds and hear about what you're seeing on the ground and what your clients are going through. And there is certainly in TLTA a wealth of support for when days are hard, when there are good days, bad days, and all days in between. And when we can help you and point you to specific legal answers or research, that is what TLTA is here for. And just to prove it, look how much fun everyone is having in these photographs. But in all seriousness, so it is really wonderful when we get to gather and we get to train and sort of come together as a group and learn.
Great. Well, thank you to both Victor and Lauren for kind of sharing more details about their departments and what they help assist and provide to our Justice Fellows. So I'm going to come back in and talk about the application itself, kind of the nuts and bolts, what to expect, eligibility, how it works, selection process, etc. So first, eligibility. So for our Justice Fellowship each year, there's eligibility that you have to meet to apply. So applicants can be currently enrolled in a JD or LLM program as long as you're graduating law school by the spring of the fellowship year that you would start. So for example, for our class of 2025, that's the application that's open now. You could be, right now, I guess, a rising 3L, so you're about to enter your 3L year of law school because you would be hopefully graduating in spring of 2025, and that would make you eligible to start in our September 2025 class. Also, applicants can be recent law graduates. So what that means is that you can have graduated up to 2 years prior to the start of the fellowship. So for the class of 2025, you could have graduated in spring of 2023, but that's no earlier than spring of 2023. So you could have graduated in 2024, or of course, spring of 2025. That's kind of our eligibility. And within that 2 years, you could have done anything in those 2 years before applying for the fellowship. Some come from clerkships, maybe you were in a different fellowship program, but you can just be 2 years prior and still be eligible for the fellowship. At time of selection, you must have authorization to work in the United States for the entire 2 years of the fellowship appointment. And then we'd like to mention that IJC fellows often speak a second language in addition to English, though we do want to emphasize that is not a requirement to apply or a requirement to become a fellow. So who are we looking for in fellows? So IJC, we really seek fellows that are, thoughtful and compassionate, empathetic and creative. Sometimes you have to be really creative as you're, serving clients to find, those favorable outcomes. Of course, dedicated to immigrant justice and also committed to the idea of a fellowship program. We really emphasize community building, like Victor was mentioning. And so we really want to bring on fellows that are really invested and interested in bringing, committing to a fellowship and kind of being a participant in that community. Ideally, our fellows speak another language in addition to English, though, as I mentioned before, that is not a requirement. And above all, really, we want fellows that are committed to pursuing this future of working in the field of immigration law, hopefully for the long term. So what will you be asked to submit as part of the application? So we do have an application form. It's kind of where we gather general information. We'll ask about, certain geographies that you might be interested in placements. We also ask things about like the bar exam you're intending to take, or if you've already taken the bar exam. So that application form is just kind of general information gathering. We do also ask for a resume, 1 to 2 pages maximum. We also ask for an unofficial law school transcript. You do not need to send us your official law school transcript for the application process. We would ask for that kind of after law school graduation if you're selected to be a fellow. But for the application process, unofficial is fine. We also ask for a statement of interest, and on the application itself, we give some prompts that can kind of help guide shaping that statement of interest for us. And then we also ask an essay question, and that prompt is also available on the application so that you can review it. Both the statement of interest and the essay questions are no more than 500 words, so 500 words or less. And then we do ask for 2 letters of recommendation. What are some tips for the application process? And this might apply even beyond IJC, anything you might apply for, but please proofread again, have somebody else proofread. You might be surprised how many applications we receive where it just would have, just having one extra set of eyes might have really improved it. For example, common mistakes. If you're going to shorten Immigrant Justice Corps, it's IJC, not ICJ. Just little things like that. That attention to detail is key. So really check on those things. Have somebody else take a second look as well. We really want to encourage you throughout the materials to highlight your experiences in immigration law. We know not every, applicant sometimes has that access to perhaps an immigration law class or a clinic. Maybe your law school doesn't, provide those opportunities, but please feel free to highlight anything that you do have, as well as work with clients, whether it's through a clinical, one of your law school clinics or, an internship, externship, any experience with clients is great to highlight, as well as any other sort of public interest work. It doesn't have to just be immigration. We encourage you to get as personal and thoughtful as you're comfortable, sharing. We'd love to understand, why you're interested in doing this work, what brings you to the field, and just your commitment to immigrant justice in general. We'd love you to share that with us. As far as recommendation letters, we get asked a lot about those. We just encourage you to choose recommenders that really know you well and can express that familiarity within their letter. We sometimes get asked, should I have, 1 academic reference and 1 professional reference? Should be a mixture. Could I have 2 academic, 2 professional? What's the breakdown of those 2? It's nice to have a little bit of academic and professional, but truly we want you to have recommenders that can speak to knowing you well and your work and your passion for the field. So encourage you to choose your recommenders and then also gently remind them. Usually that's the last thing that kind of comes in at the end of the application process are those recommendation letters. So gently remind them that, if they've agreed to recommend you, that those are coming due. You'll be able to see in your portal if they have been submitted or not. So just give them plenty of time to know about the letter and then remind them as the deadline gets closer. We also will ask about your language proficiency, so don't overplay or underplay. There'll be open space for you to tell us if you're working on some of those skills, but we do test language proficiency at the interview stage for those that express a higher level of proficiency, and we can talk about that more later. As far as the application and selection process timeline, this is kind of what to expect throughout this upcoming, 3L year if you're 3L, or this would apply generally if you're looking at future years. So our application launches in July. It's launched this year on July 15th, so it's already open, and it usually closes mid to late October. So this year it is going to close on Sunday, October 20th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Once the application closes, we have a diverse selection committee of stakeholders that gather, and they review all the Justice Fellow applications. They make recommendations to the IJC staff of who should move forward into the next stage, which is the interview process. And so we take those suggestions and invite fellows to interviews. So that usually happens in November are the interviews. And then we from there also have our selection committee participate in the interview process. They give recommendations based on the interviews of who would be selected as a finalist to go into the matching process. And we would notify our finalists and start the matching process by December. And there's multiple stages. We'll talk about matching in just a second. Our goal is to have all matches, the matching process complete by February of 2025. So you would know by then, are you selected as a fellow? Were you successful? Will you be starting with us in the fall? And then our new Justice Fellow class starts in September. You obviously have a lot going on in your spring semester. Most likely, if you're graduating the bar exam over the summer, you would start with us in September of 2025. So what is the matching process? So as we talked about earlier, we place our fellows with host organizations, but the question often comes up, how do I know where I'm going to go? So there's many steps to this process, but we want to emphasize that we ask you what you're interested in, where you'd be open to working from our list of available placements. So there's many steps. The first step of this process is the ranking process. So we start with our finalists. We would provide you with a list of all of the available placement options for the year. We're going to give you basically a profile of the host organization. It'll go into a lot of detail about the organization, the scope of work, the pay and benefits information, as well as, of course, where they're located. We know the geography is a huge factor in where you might be open to working. So you get to review all of the information about those organizations, and you tell us your preferences. You can let us know if you're not interested in working with the organization at all. So we would not attempt to place you in an organization you said that you're not interested in working with. And then you also tell us kind of your strength of interest in each of those organizations. And we talk more about that closer to the matching phase. But we hear from you first what your preferences are, and you rank the organizations according to your personal preferences. From there, we send your information to the organizations you are open to working with. So they'll receive a short statement of interest that you've prepared for the organization. They'll receive a copy of your resume. And so they also engage in a ranking process as well. So they rank finalists based on those materials that you've provided and the needs of their organization. And they let IJC know kind of who they are open to working with, as well as their strength of their interest. From there, IJC comes in and we start to match. So we take what the finalists have shared, the Justice Fellow finalists, and the host organizations have shared, and we try to find matches. So if we find a match, we send what's called a tentative offer. So we would connect you with that host organization to meet and talk. And you have about a week to meet with the organization and decide if you want to accept or decline the placement. For the match to be successful and for you to receive a final offer of a Justice Fellowship, both parties have to accept. You have to accept the placement and the organization has to accept the placement. But if you accept and they accept, that's successful, and that's when we move on to all next steps to get you ready for the fall. So that was just kind of a brief overview of that process. We encourage you, if you're eligible and interested, please start your application now so you can see what's involved. Of course, the application isn't due until October 20th, but it's always nice in the summer to get a head start before classes start up. So feel free to visit our website to see the direct link. I believe we can perhaps put it in the chat as well if that is helpful, but we would love to see your application.